really passionate about storytelling. And when you are passionate about storytelling, I think you're really saying that you're passionate about people. I am just letting my ideas flow.
The Voices of the Omniverse.
Leeloo Dallas Multipass.
Yeah.
Multipass.
Leela, Multipass. She knows it's a Multipass. Leeloo Dallas, my wife. We're newlyweds. Just met.
Multipass.
You know how it is. Bump into each other, sparks happen. Yeah, she knows it's a Multipass. Yeah, anyway, we're in love.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Voices of the Omniverse. I'm your host, Adonis. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Eileen Level, a passionate and dynamic force in the world of cinema and storytelling. With over a decade of experience in the film festival industry, Eileen has worked as a media events manager and short film programmer, blending her love for visual arts with her commitment to mentoring the next generation of storytellers. She's also a champion for under-resourced youth, using her expertise to make the world of film a more accessible and inclusive place. As the founder and director of AniTOMO, a unique initiative focused on bringing people together through anime and film, she's truly paving the way for community engagement and positive change. Get ready for an inspiring conversation about the power of storytelling, the magic of shared experiences, and the art of building connections through film. Eileen, welcome.
You did such a great job at introducing me. I'm like, oh, who's this person? I want to know her. I'm like a decade long. I was like, how old is she now? Yeah, no, that's me. I am known as, like, I gave myself this name, the cinema captain, because I go sailing through the world looking for other film festivals to either be a venue manager at, because I love cinema exhibition. And for people that are like, cinema exhibition, you mean movie theaters? Yeah, I love spending time at the movie theaters, and with movie theaters shutting down across the country, especially, like, I'm on a fight to protect that and to just, bring movie theaters back to cinema deserts, especially in communities that are predominantly POC or low income. but yeah, I love cinema and it's a part of my life. But how I got into the anime world
Mhm.
is a whole journey that I did not foresee. Even I honestly 3 years ago, I was just a girl that really loved to, sit in bed and binge anime and read manga. And now I'm a founder of AniTOMO Convention, which has now become more than a convention. So, but I think in the end, it's just
Mhm.
as you said. Like I'm really passionate about storytelling, and when
Mhm.
you are passionate about storytelling, I think you're really saying that you're passionate about people, um,
Mm.
and yeah, and that's just who I am.
Cinemas have long been a place where communities come together, but with the rise of streaming services, that shared experience is becoming less and less common. How do you think we can preserve cinema as a cultural hub in this digital age?
So something that I'm working on right now is creating cinema murals. And it's
Mhm.
not a new concept, but it's not something that exists everywhere. Like you've had drive-ins, people are very
Mhm.
familiar with drive-ins. People are familiar with brick and mortar movie theaters with the marquees.
Right.
People are familiar with, small art house theaters, independent cinemas, and even and then the multiplex, and the theaters that existed in malls. But this idea of like, okay, well, movie theaters are disappearing. It's very expensive to
Yeah.
open up a movie theater in a space like that's very expensive. We're talking about millions of dollars.
Mhm.
But when you think about, okay, what does it actually take to have a cinema event, right?
Mhm.
It's a screen on a wall. Sometimes it's just a sheet hanging, right? And you have a projector and some chairs or some blankets and the people and a film. And that's it. Everything else is icing on the cake.
Yeah.
So in my childhood community where I had my first cinema going experience at Canarsie Theater on Avenue L, and this is like the last stop on the L train in Brooklyn. Yeah, this is where I had my first experience and where I remember clearly seeing Mortal Kombat back in the 90s.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And like, and just so many amazing films. Um, and now there's no theater there. There are no theaters that I'm aware of in Brownsville, which is adjacent.
Mhm.
There are no theaters in East New York. How many thousands of people are impacted by this? How many thousands of people in these neighborhoods see films on a daily basis? How many thousands of people head to Manhattan
Yep.
outside of their community to see storytelling? How many times do you hear on a daily basis, Black stories matter? Stories from people of color matter. They need to be represented on the big screen.
Mhm.
Okay, so they need to be represented on the big screen, but we can't just, go off the block and around the corner to experience
Oh
our own
yeah.
stories. You can't come into our neighborhoods and see films with us, curated by us. Like why is that? Now, what's interesting is that cinema deserts are now a problem for even non-POC communities. It's
Yeah.
it's everywhere because of what you said, streaming. But to answer your question, um the way that I'm fighting back is, you don't stop talking about it. You don't stop going to the movie theater. You post about it. You invite friends.
Yep.
You attend events, you support filmmakers and you share their story. And you also, when you're talking to filmmakers, you also speak to them about like, well, how do you share your film beyond film festivals and things of that nature? But I'm creating a cinema mural in Canarsie. And we got funding from New York Citizens Grants, and I am so happy and honored. And it's a community project that we hope to launch in 2025 of this year in the summer. But yeah, it's a process, but it's getting
Definitely.
permission from a building to be able to like rent this wall and put up some chairs and make it this beautiful piece that people can pass by every single day. And even when there isn't a film screening, you're reminded that cinema does exist in your community. And so that's where I think is one way to support cinema and bringing back movie theaters to our communities.
the intimacy setting of a movie theater and just how much of a different experience it is. Whether, you know, streaming at home is obviously a very extremely different experience than being in a movie theater. I feel like the times that I remember most of the movies I've seen have been where it's like I feel like it was an interactive experience where like all of us were laughing at the same moments, or like gasping at someone who just fell off a cliff or whatever, referencing Avengers and whatnot. But like those type of moments where it's like, you know, I always, as a kid, I was always like, dang, I never got to have that, you know, Luke, I am your father kind of like experience in the theater, and I was always longing for it. And then we had like, for me, Avengers Infinity War and then Endgame were like those big pivotal moments. And then Spider-Man comes out with like, you know, Tobey Maguire's and Andrew Garfield are in it. The crowd's going insane. And I feel like that's something that people don't realize that they're missing. And a lot of people don't even know that they're missing it because they never even got to experience being in a movie theater where everyone, like, it was like packed out. Like before we had to like, I mean, now it's like you can buy your tickets online and reserve your seat. Before we had to wait in line and just be there as early as possible just to get a good seat. So we don't understand like even that aspect of it kind of like built up a lot of momentum and angst to like really watch it and be there. So I'm a little bit curious. So places like the Jean Cocteau Cinema in Santa Fe remind us of how smaller theaters can offer an intimate, impactful experience. What do spaces like that mean to you personally? And how do you think we can preserve the soul of cinema in ways, you know, larger chains can't?
Okay, so I love what you said about like having that like Luke, I am your father moment. And I think that's and that's really where it is. It's just like, you know, adults need third spaces too. I don't understand what like we know what we need, and yet we complicate it so much. Like, well, how do we do these things? How do we come together? And I'm like, it's not that complicated. We did this before.
Yeah.
And you know, in my opinion, movie theaters are adult community centers. You got to pay a fee to attend, right? Right? But well, I mean, not unfortunately, because you really do want to support the cinema going business. But the reality is to me, that is where adults kind of hang out when you don't want the other option is what a bar, like what there needs to be more third spaces for us where we need to gather. But this is something that is so obvious.
Yeah.
Like, of course, we want to have big emotional moments with each other. We want so that we can feel connected and inspired, and to, you know, just dream beyond ourselves, and to I don't know, there's just like so many feelings that come with going to the cinema and experiencing that with other people. And I love the silence of conversation, if that makes any sense. There is a conversation that is taking place with our emotions when we're in a theater. It's in silence sometimes. You know, obviously when we're gasping together, but sometimes you can like, you know, drop a pin in the theater.
You can feel it too. It's like, it's a you know, like it's psychic. You know what everyone else is thinking in that moment. Yeah, wow.
Totally telepathic, totally happening. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad that I was born to have this like longing and like passion for cinema going, because it's like the best feeling to want to get up every day and like, how can we bring movie theaters back? Like that, right. Everybody has a different passion, but for me, I guess I was chosen to do this. But when I think about smaller movie theaters, like the one that I visited in Santa Fe. So that's a thing that I normally do. When I travel around the world, one of the first things that I'm looking for is a movie theater. And I'm just so excited to see how does cinema look like for your community. One of my favorite movie theaters ever is the new Parkway in Oakland, California. It is a second run movie theater. It's super independent. Like they show like indie films, and they support a lot of independent filmmakers, but they also show like second run films, like big Hollywood films that came out months ago. So that they have a great menu, and then they do this thing which is called like Karma Tuesdays, where 20%, I believe, of your ticket purchase, like that amount goes back into the community, and then the organization that they select to spotlight for that month, they'll invite them to the movie theater to speak to you before the screening happens. They're like, hey, you're supporting so-and-so this month. Thank you so much. A couple of dollars from each of your ticket is going to us to help us support, to help us buy like athletic gear so that we can keep, you know, playing basketball in the neighborhood. So you know exactly where your money's going. I mean, like, I've never seen a theater
that's not
that
often.
ever.
Yeah.
And they have like cool things like They have graffiti all over the walls, and they have cool couches and seatings, and they have one seat that looks like it's a dryer. It's an actual like hair dryer,
Yeah.
and you can sit in there. And then they have like, open mic night, and I was like,
Wow.
that's my type of cinema, to be honest.
Yeah. That's amazing.
But it is amazing, but I wholeheartedly also support like the big multi-chains as well, because that's 300 seats, and you know what that feels like when Tobey Maguire shows up, and you're like, oh my gosh, it's Tobey. And you're sitting in the theater with 300 people, so there's something different to that as well. I love all of them for a different reason. They don't have to compete with each other. If you're programming correctly, not just for the cinema piece, but for the events piece, if you're programming to your community, then it does give you a reason to say, like, you know what? This week I'm gonna go to my community, my community cinema, the indie cinema up the block. But next week, because a bigger Hollywood film's coming out, I'm gonna go to AMC, or I'm gonna go to Regal. There's enough film to go around. And what's so funny is there's more filmmakers, which has always been the case, than there are cinemas. So there's plenty of movies to curate depending on what theater works best for you. But we need more theaters. And so that's how I support them is, I visit these theaters, I purchase a ticket, and then I take a picture, and I ask managers or like folks at the concession or box office stands, and I'm like, what is the story behind this theater? And it's always so fascinating to me to just hear that. And it's almost like getting to know, it's almost like talking to a stranger, like you're personifying this theater and you're giving it more life. You're like, wow, that's 100%. Your name. And this is your style, and this is how you present yourself to people. And when I get to know you a little bit more, which is like you walking into the theater, there's all these things that I learn about you. So, but that's me. Like, I'm like really, really in love with movie theaters in that way. And that's how I support the smaller ones.
We often see a balance between fan service, comedy, and emotional storytelling. Do you think that balance serves to enrich the medium, or does it sometimes dilute the emotional depth of a series trying to say something a bit more profound? And I kind of want to double that question with the ideas of film in itself, where we're getting back into like the sequels and reboots, and sometimes that is a little fan servicey. Like we were talking about Spider-Man as well. I feel like that was also balancing a lot of fan service, because that's something the writers knew the audience was going to love it and go crazy for it. And it was something that could potentially trend a long time in social media. But how do you think that balance is affecting the media?
Well, what's so interesting is I think when something is done well, then it's not a problem. If you do it well, it is not a problem. So for instance, for Dune, let's talk about Dune for a second. I didn't read the books. However, I found out that there were 2 films that came before it. But there's a huge time. There was like plenty of time in between the last film to the current film that made it necessary for me to make it, because technology has changed so much. So this is like this truly cinematic film that I've seen it twice in theaters, maybe 3 times, because it was so. And I'm talking about the second one. The first one was also great, but I didn't see that one in theaters. And the second one I had to see in theaters. So this is absolutely gorgeous, from the costume design, the music, just everything. Sometimes stories do need to be retold with fresh eyes and with technology. And I'm okay with that. But then there are other situations where there's just to do it, right? And I love Disney. I grew up on Disney, but like every Disney film suddenly needs a live action, but nobody asked for it. Yeah. In my opinion. Not for my community. I'm like, did we ask for this? Because the films were so, and that's what's so funny. I just said that sometimes it's needed because time has happened and you want to test the technology. But for some reason, I did not need, an Aladdin live action. I really didn't. It was so perfect for what it was. It's like, leave it alone. I think it's more so about like, have your kids and siblings watch it to go back to the past, right? Like Gone with the Wind. I don't need a remake of Gone with the Wind. There are certain films, leave it alone. It's called a classic. Let it be a classic, okay?
Yeah.
But that's the thing. However, if you take a classic and you remake it and it's phenomenal, I mean, who am I to say that we didn't need it, right? Or like, who am I to say that like we should have never made it? And I think the problem is, from my opinion, is that, and I guess I don't have to say it's my opinion because it's me speaking, but when you talk about film, people would be like, oh my God, what is she saying? I don't agree, right? But I think that the problem that I see is that a lot of these remakes aren't, they're just not quality. You know, visually speaking, maybe they are, maybe they're not. The story isn't great. It feels forced. It feels fan servicey, and we're not dumb. The audience, we know what we know what we need. We know what we want, right? So like we know when this is happening and it's not great, and I think that's the problem. And so a lot of it just feels like a cash grab. But this is why I like independent cinema, because when Hollywood is playing games with us, right, and just like vomiting out all these films, guess what? This is an opportunity for people to discover independent films and to discover art house cinemas that are smaller, but they're curating quality films. And I think there is that discussion between like, you know, an Oscar-worthy film or, you know, a film festival, acknowledged film, like something that really took a big award from Sundance or Tribeca or something of that nature. And people are starting to just buzz to that. Like, okay, well, Hollywood, you're not going to give me quality? Well, then I'm going to go over here. But all in all, what I do feel is happening is people are returning back to the cinema. Like there's something buzzing where it's happening again. And I think we've had some great films come out recently, and I think that's helping. But yeah, I do feel as though if in the end the film turned out to be great, then there's no issue. But it's just the issue. But the issue is that there just aren't a lot of great remakes happening, and that's pretty unfortunate, because that's when people start to turn to, well, streaming. Or I'll just watch TV shows, or I'll stick to my anime, or I'll do this, and that's fine. But yeah, that's kind of like my thoughts around that.
It's interesting. It even makes me think about like whether or not it's, you know, the advancement in technology that is kind of becoming a hindrance, or it's helping the industry. Because as you were saying, you know, certain reboots could be better because you have the technology to actually do what they wanted to do before. But then I'm also faced with, like, I was watching The Fifth Element at home streaming versus they were giving it at a theater near me. They were doing a reshowing of it. Insanely different experience, especially one from just the score and like, you know, the different sounds that I was hearing. I was not going to get that from my TV and not going to have that immersive experience. But it's like, in that case, it's like, would remaking a movie like The Fifth Element make sense nowadays, where it's like, yes, you can do a lot more with CGI, the technology, all these different advancements that we have. But then I think a large aspect of it that is being missed is, you know, the actor's portrayal, the acting. You know, you're not going to get the same type of delivery if you're also having a reboot of new characters. And I think that's also sometimes the difficulty that, you know, they're tasked with, where, you know, you have a movie that is a great reboot because the actors kind of amplify it and the technology amplifies it. But I feel like there's so many different variables in that situation where it's easier to do it wrong than it is to do it right. If that kind of makes sense.
I'm super biased. They better not make another Leeloo Multipass like that. Do not touch Leeloo Multipass. Leave my home. Like, honestly, as soon as you said it, the cast, who are you finding? Leave this movie alone. Like, that's my favorite sci-fi film. After watching
amazing.
Fifth Element, I immediately purchased an orange wig. I was rocking that in my 20s. There are photos. If you dig deep. So like that film for me is perfect. And so I don't need another Fifth Element.
Exactly.
Is somebody listening and will probably be like, I fear, please do not make another Fifth Element. Like that's another one for me where I'm just like, just go discover the original Fifth Element and study that. Like honestly, I've tried to purchase the concept book for it. You can't. I've tried. It's so hard to find it, and when it did exist, it was super expensive, but it's so worth it. It's one of the best
100%.
films. Yeah, no, there's just, so to your point about, now we have technology. What they were doing then felt like something that they could have created today.
Bingo.
You know what I mean?
That's exactly.
That's why I'm like, leave it alone. Now, for instance, we talked about Dune. Okay, so this is what I'm saying. I'm like, I feel like Fifth Element is on the level of Dune, current day Dune. So that's why I'm like, do not leave that film alone. But will somebody try to test that? Sure. And that's where we start to question why. Where is the originality? You can't come up with another story like that. Like if you can't make a different film from Fifth Element, then you should not be making it. Leave it alone. And another thing to your point is, besides talking about a powerhouse cast, and not to say that there aren't incredible actors today, but my goodness, sometimes you just hit it, and that was one of those films where it's just like impeccable cast. But at the end of the day, it's not even about always the technology. And I remember I was at DC TV recently, and we were talking about their youth education film program. And they were saying, we don't even put equipment into our participants' hands right away, because you need to learn how to write a story first. If you do not know how to write a story, this is not film. You should not, like, because anybody can pick up a camera and change the settings and like learn how to frame things. Like it doesn't matter what type of phone you have. If you know how to like make the angles and change the lighting, you're fine. But do you know how to write a good story? If you don't have a good story, you don't have a film. Wow. You know, it's like, so that's the thing. It's just like, so is the problem that we just don't have good stories, and that's why we're pulling from previous great ones? Then don't make it.
Wow. Because
then we should be supporting other filmmakers that are creating quality versus just pulling from, the back catalog of Hollywood.
Right.
Because I rather just do a rewatch. I rather go back to like an Alamo Drafthouse premiering,
which I ended up doing.
Element, right?
Yeah.
I don't mind doing that. Nostalgia is needed. We need nostalgia. That's okay. And not everything has to be like everybody stay present and think of the future. Like, no, sometimes it's nice to look back in the past, right? It's nice to go back and to study that and to study it with fresh eyes. I tell you, I haven't seen Fifth Element in a few years, but I bet you if I watch it today versus when I watched it, I'd have a different reaction, completely different reaction. And I think about that a lot with certain films, like, there's so many films I feel like I watched at an inappropriate age. Like I watched like Nightmare on Elm Street. I watched that when I was 5 years old by accident with my babysitter. Typical 90s moment, right?
Yeah.
But there are so many films, or even because I know you know that I love animation,
right? And
so like there's certain anime films and or just series that like I feel though I watched at a young age, and if I were to watch it today with different life experiences, it would feel very different for me. And I like Attack on Titan. A lot of kids watched Attack on Titan when it first dropped. And they were probably like 10, 11, but that is truly a film for mature audiences.
Yeah, it definitely goes over people's head, like the social economical, like different, like disparity, the classism, all these things. Like they don't even get into that until like 11th grade, even. So you have to have certain life experiences to truly understand what you're looking at. Like the betrayal, the love, the loss. Like it's really Shakespearean, honestly. Like AOT is insane.
Yeah, no, definitely. But yeah, there's if anything is taken away from this interview, it is do not remake Fifth Element. Please leave Leeloo alone.
That's hilarious. You've spoken about in the past how watching Thriller at the age of 5 was a pivotal moment that really awakened your love for storytelling. How has that sense of awe and wonder influenced the way you approach teaching the next generation of storytellers, particularly those in under-resourced communities? Because we were just talking about how, the lack of storytelling ability is also creating a lack in the quality of these films that are being produced. So please tell me a little bit about that.
Okay, so two things. Yeah, Thriller, again, perfect example. I saw Thriller in daycare. I could not have been more than 5 years old. I'm not kidding with you. And isn't it so funny how there's just certain memories that just stay ingrained in your mind and others slip away and you don't know why. But for that, I mean, you know what? I'm sure everybody can understand why that would stay ingrained in my mind, because it was one of a kind. Nothing like this had ever, no one had ever seen anything like this before. It was pure magic. And you didn't understand what was happening to you. And it is interesting how I made that point about seeing AOT when you're like 10, 11, and then later is different. For whatever reason, there's something special about Thriller that's like, no matter what age you're seeing it at,
it's an experience.
Exactly the way that you're supposed to experience it. It was just incredible. And so that technically was the first film I had ever seen. That was for sure. It was just a short film, and most people saw it as a music video, but it truly was a short film. And I think about, I don't think about Michael Jackson Thriller when I'm thinking about teaching youth film, but I will say that projects like that are what help me to be like, are how I present myself, right? Which is like, try it all, right? And do everything and experiment and do it just as you intended to do it, right? And so I don't teach film. I am very passionate, and this is why I love having this conversation, because people think, oh, she loves movies, maybe she's teaching youth about films, and yes, to a degree, but I love taking kids on trips to the cinema. I like teaching youth how to build cinema spaces, and I love inspiring and encouraging youth to understand the importance of the cinema going experience. And that's equally as important as teaching somebody how to create a film. Because if you ask any filmmaker, generally, why, like, what is the goal for this film? Most people will say beyond impact and things like that. Like some films really have a lot of impact and are trying to push law or like trying to make change in the world. But a lot of people are like, I want to screen my film on the big screen in front of many people, right? That's not going to change just from day one. So if you're teaching film and not teaching about the cinema going experience, you're not giving them the full story, because one goes with the other. They can't live without each other. You like watching film by yourself is not going to ever make the same impact as going into a cinema space and watching it with many people. That's the goal. And so, no filmmaker is making a film just for one person. Maybe a few out there, but the goal is for many people to be impacted by it and to love it and to experience it and to have opinions about it. So when I am with youth participants, or like I used to work with the New York International Children's Film Festival as their head of education, and I'm still with them, but I focus more on the film festival aspect as their venue manager, which is what I love to do, is running the venue during the festival. But when I was their head of education, I would take students from different elementary and middle school, and sometimes high school, to different movie theaters across New York City. The Quad Cinema, IFC, SVA Theater, and we would show them short films that were programmed by the film festival. And I would love this part of my job, this field trip. They'd watch a package of short films from all around the world. And then after the package of short films, there would be a Q&A, a student-led Q&A. And the first question that you ask is, how did that make you feel? What were you thinking there? What did you love about that? What didn't you like about it? How would you do it differently? And my favorite statement is like, tell me more. And you let them lead. And that's it. And so with all the films that I've ever seen, from, the short film Thriller all the way Fifth Element, all of the films, the reality here is that I enjoyed watching it with people.
Yeah.
I enjoyed having that experience, and all I want to do is hear, how did that make you feel? Were you feeling the same thing that I was feeling? Like, what were your thoughts behind it? That the conversation. And I think that's really what I'm trying to impart on a lot of people. And when and in the work that I do, so I specifically, like, even when I was at the New York International Children's Film Festival, something that I really push for is working with schools that are low performing and predominantly underrepresented communities. And I love that the organization was like, well, we've done that before, but if you want to take it even further, run with it. Let's do it. We expanded to Newark, and we worked with a lot of Title I schools there. Actually, all of Newark is Title I schools, right? So it's, for me, it was such a pleasure, and it was so amazing to just be in the audience with them and look across to the students and see them look like the light of the screen reflecting on their face.
Yeah.
And then them just getting excited to get on the microphone and say, like, well, I felt that this film did it, and that to me is like, wow, it's about listening. And that's another thing. So I think the when it comes to filmmaking, and when I am in situations where I'm a part of a filmmaking program with youth, and predominantly POC youth, I just love to listen, and you gotta listen. A lot of them, from my experience, feel as though you're not going to listen to them, right? Yeah. So they're very quick to answer, and their statements are short. But when you do follow up with "Tell me more," they're like, you want?
Yeah, the surprise.
Oh, okay. Well, and then it just goes and goes and goes and goes. And then you end up with a kid that could possibly make a thriller, right? Something that is just so extraordinary and nothing like you've seen. And that's where you get your original storytelling from. You have to let them speak, and you have to be willing to listen fully. And I'm a long-winded gal. Like, I'm an only child. I talk a lot. I could talk for days. But when you are present and you let them speak, oh my goodness, the stories that can be told. Yeah. And we keep doing all these remakes, and it's like, are you kidding me? Do you know how much original storytelling there is out there waiting to be plucked, and waiting to have funding, waiting to have a team to be created? There's enough to go around. There is no reason to really do remakes if we needed to, but there is room for it. Right. Again, there is room for it if it is going to be done well. But that's really where I come from when I'm talking about when I'm working in these when I'm working in my community and communities that are very similar. It's inspiring them to create cinema where cinema doesn't exist, and it doesn't have to look the way that you think a cinema has to look. And I had to learn that, because all my life I'm like, I want a movie theater with a marquee. It's gonna say Parlez-vous Cinema, and because Parlez-vous is a Creole Haitian word that means to speak up, and I'm half Haitian and half French. So this word, I embody that, right? I'm very projected, and I'm like, you gotta speak up, you gotta say how you feel. But for me, it's like creating cinema where it doesn't exist. I can't afford a movie theater that costs millions of dollars right now, and I had to have a reality check. But then I was like, but what can you do? Well, a cinema mural is more affordable, and that's something I can do. And who's to say that that's not a cinema? Did we not speak about this before? Yeah. It's a film, a screen, a projector, and people. Whether they're standing or sitting, like, that's cinema. That is a space right there. And so that is kind of something that's something that I've been teaching to people and saying, like, let's do more of these. Let's have more cinema murals. Let's have more cinema experiences, whether it's in a backyard, whether it's in an office space. Just keep having it and have it with people. And so that's where I come in, and that's the work that I do. And it's very exciting to watch youth, put together and put together speakers and put together projectors and put together popcorn machines. And I love doing that. I love watching them do that, because I'm not going to be here forever. So it is very important that once you find out what you're passionate about and what you love, that you share that with people. So because they need to continue the work. Yep. That is the most important thing. Wow. And it's and cinema exhibition and inspiring youth about cinema exhibition specifically is so incredibly important. I'm like, if I see one more film program, if I see one more filmmaking program without a discussion or a sector that talks about cinema exhibition, I'm like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
We're like handicapping ourselves in this weird way. I'm like, you have to have these conversations. They have to learn how to make a film, and they have to learn how to distribute their film, and they have to learn how to exhibit their film in their community first. That's where I am.
Producing a lot of music, something that I've come to learn and understand is the idea of the setting, you know, the experience, the place where you're going to even be playing this music. I've noticed a lot of artists recently where, and this is again where you don't get it until you are living it, where it's like not until you're going to a concert where it's in a small hall or you're going to a stadium concert. The music that they play is very specific, and the music that they make is very specific, and it's very according to venue as well. Certain songs you'll start to hear nowadays will have these almost like crowd-like chants in them, or it sounds like you're at like a soccer game and like in Europe, and it's just these people just going on and on. And I feel like that's an aspect where it's like, wow, these artists they know that their tour is going to be a stadium tour. They know the audience, they know the experience that it's going to be. Let me create the experience in an auditory form so that when I'm playing it in the stadium, everyone's chanting along with it. It's almost like, so just being able to take that approach where it's like, you know where you're going to be playing it already changes how you're going to be making it. And it kind of navigates the way that you make your music. Because a lot of times as well, let's take it down from the stadium idea where it's what I refer to, I feel like there's different genres of music in this capacity where it's like you have headphone music, you have car music, you have speaker music. And I feel like there's a lot of artists that also focus more on headphone music, where certain music sounds so much better to me when I have my headphone on rather than hearing it on a speaker. And even when, like, say people are DJing at parties, you can also hear certain songs that they play. They avoid certain of the headphone songs because they know it's not going to be getting that same reaction to the crowd and whatnot. And so that's at least like the first part that instantly that what you were talking about made me think of. But I'm even more curious on, like, in your eyes, like, what's the perfect formula for a film or video medium that, you know, creates that idea of like a truly shared lived experience? You were talking a little bit about like a lot of unique storytellers. We obviously got to know each other also through Justin Roblero's film with Shades of Otaku, and how he's really, you know, setting his own path and, you know, trailblazing his own view of how to not only get a community together, but to have that community's voice being heard. So I want to know what kind of elements like narrative, sound, visual design, do you think are essential for an audience to connect on a deeper level?
Oh, I love that question. So first, I highly recommend, if you haven't seen it because you love music and scores, Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet from 1996. Have you seen that film?
I'm writing it down right now.
Oh my goodness. This movie is essential to music. Like, this was one of the first films when I was growing up where I felt like I needed both albums. I needed both soundtracks. There's volume 1 and volume 2, I believe. Mm-hmm. But there's just the score because it was so incredible, and then there's the other soundtrack where it's like the actual songs that were playing. Like, they had the Cardigans on there and they had Radiohead on there. Even when you buy the Blu-ray, like the special edition Romeo and Juliet, there's a music edition. That's how amazing. You have to see this film and let me know what you think about it. It's definitely one of my favorite films for music. And also to what you were saying about how when people in the music industry, when they're creating their music, they know they are creating it and based on how they intend it to be received by a larger audience or an audience in a club or just for streaming purposes. But you know what that made me think instantly? I believe that most filmmakers are creating films because they believe it's going to be filmed in a theater. There's no options here, unless you like you're getting unless you're like actually doing a series, or like you're doing a film that's going straight to streaming.
Right.
But most people, when they're making a film, especially independent filmmakers, they're making a film because they expect it to go into a film festival, which will be in a movie theater. Like,
Yeah.
I don't, like, there is just one avenue. So this is why I'm always just so at a loss of words when we keep pushing this more filmmaking programs, because everybody needs to tell their story and everybody deserves to have their story on the big screen. And I'm like, do you even believe yourself? Because you're creating these programs and there aren't, and for the kids whose stories aren't being represented on the big screen, and yet there's no movie theater in their neighborhood for them to go see
to display. The irony is crazy.
It doesn't make the math is not mathing, and it never was mathing. It's like somebody woke up, and that totally happens in the world, right? Somebody wakes up and they're just like, oh, there's a problem in the world. Let's come up with the first idea and let's like put a Band-Aid on it, and that's gonna fix everything. And we don't look back at the issue. Like, is it actually helping? Yeah. Like, why can't we readjust? And I just feel as though it's taken too long for film programs to include film festivals and this concept of like, what is it to finish, when you finish a film, what are you doing with it? To have somebody put so much work into writing and acting and editing and all of these things and not actually teach them the rest, I don't know, I just feel like it's not fair. I just feel like it's not fair.
It's not like a completed curriculum.
Exactly. It's like you did all that work only for your film to stay on your laptop and just like share it with your friends and family. Okay, I guess. And yeah, and I will say you gain a lot of experience, a lot of skills that are transferable, but then you have to sell it differently, but most people are selling it like, oh no, you can become a filmmaker. Not just like you can use film to gain skills that can be transferable for other work. No, it's typically sold as you can become a filmmaker. But what does that actually mean?
Yeah.
So
they're selling the role, not the art form, more or less.
And this is all just from like my personal experience and what I've seen. I'm sure that there are so many programs, and now I believe even college programs are now including talks about distribution and film festivals as well, to empower filmmakers to know, because they're practically a one-person band, right? Like, you're making your film, you're raising your own money, you're doing everything on your own. But
too many hats.
Right, but you need to learn about the film festival industry. You need to learn about exhibition, because that's how your film goes further. That's how it goes beyond you. And the thing is, what I love, because I'm doing it, right? You can become your own exhibitor. Imagine every filmmaker who plans to make more films put some money into buying two speakers, a screen, even like a fabric screen that you could like put up on hooks to a wall, some chairs, and created their own cinema spaces in their own neighborhood. Like, find a parking lot. It's like, find something, find like a lounge. There's ways. And I'm looking forward to that, to the evolution of cinema in that way. But to your question about, what is it, like, what is the formula, or like, what does film need to really get people going and maybe get them back into movie theaters? I think that's such a great question. And I don't think that it's one thing. I think it's a lot of things. But if I had to choose one, and because we were just thinking about music, I'm like, oh, music really is important. I would definitely have to say it's the writing. Yeah. It comes down to the writing. You may not be able to afford costumes or visual effects or even sound. But if you have quality writing and great actors to rise to the occasion, there's nothing you can't do. I mean, you have to have a quality script, or it's like, you could be a pretty person, right? Pretty face. I think everybody's beautiful, the beauty's in the eye of the beholder. But to like, normal standards, whatever, whoever people think is typically popular, you could have a pretty face, right? But then what are you saying? You've lost me. Right. I'm not even listening to you. You are an uninteresting person. I am sorry, not sorry. And I have blocked you out. and also will not be calling you back. So these, it's the same thing with humans, right? Like,
Right.
and then, you know, and the thing is like, and I love your question again, because I think about like, okay, again, with people, you know, when people are looking for a partner, they're like, oh, I want them to be a good listener, financially stable. I want them to be well dressed and educated and come from a good family. And like all of these things that are like, okay, that high expectations. I'm like, who are you even that person? Come on, stop it. So that's the same thing with a film. We want a film to have great sound, great costume, and great all these things. And when it's not perfect, we're like, oh, like they really failed us on this situation. I'm like, well, you know, it is what it is. But at minimum, you have to be a good person. You have to be like a good person. And I think that's the same thing with a film. Like you have to have a good story, and the story is the soul. If you don't have a good soul, I don't know what to say. I don't know.
No, honestly, and you bring up a great point, because a lot of manga that started out, or like before it even got to a point of being an anime, like one that comes to mind is like One Punch Man or like Mob Psycho. Mob Psycho actually specifically, where it's like the art style when he was first releasing was like pretty subpar in terms of like what the market looked like in terms of what people were drawing in their manga. But the story was good. The story is what people gravitate to. They resonated with it. They resonated with Mob, the main character of the show. And it became its own thing where as time went on, the art style started to get better and better and better. But no matter what, the storyline was still always above how great the art was going to be. And they were able to create something where the story was so good that they were able to then produce it as an anime. And, you know, you get to upgrade, you know, all the visual elements. So it's like, exactly to your point, it's like you might not even need the visual presence of it to be that appealing, as long as your story is good, because you can always get to that point where you can always look better later in that same kind of analogy and idea.
Well, you know what's so interesting is I remember during the pandemic that like a lot of people were streaming and becoming content creators, passing time and like, you know, just being creative, because like what else was there to do? And I remember seeing a lot of YouTube clips of those stick figure short stories, like just like very comedic for pure comedy, just 2 stick figures, right? And a 3rd grader could draw that. 2nd grader could draw stick figures. But the stories, the writing was so great that you were hooked. I was literally watching these stick figure YouTubes for like, you know, weeks on end, because I was like, these are so funny. And comedy is always like a great thing. I feel like we don't get enough great comedy. I feel like, I mean, if we're really speaking, okay, so we talked about, writing is key. And that to me is number one. Everything else is just icing on the cake. I think if we could have good writing and then great music, I think then we're solid here. But, you know, when I think about, you know, just where this is all going to go in terms of how people can create quality stories, it really goes back to what I was saying about just trying it all and maybe starting with yourself, starting with your own personal stories and what reflects back to you. And like, sometimes we connect best with what is similar to all of us. And that's why I think comedy is one of those things I wish we had more of. It's always horror, which doesn't even get as much support as it should. There's some great horror films, like Smile 2, I think, was a great film this year. Great acting. But comedy is not something that I find myself purchasing tickets to often, because there's just not enough of it. Yeah. And I wish that there was, because that when we laugh together, we truly share and connect together. So that's one thing where I'm like, when you have like higher emotions, like having fear, you're going to get that experience at the cinema, but also just laughing. Because that's where like because when you were talking about with me about like how a pin can drop, those like the dramas and like where you're fully locked in. But when you're afraid, you have a jump scare, we all have a reaction together, and then we
physical.
laugh. Oh my
Yeah.
God. Right, it's all physical. Laughter is very physical. And so, because otherwise, when the quieter moments are happening, we're having those silent conversations, you still don't know how that person is perceiving it, but you feel kind of like a rumbling. You feel that synergy.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're laughing, it's like, oh my gosh, right, I live in a world with other people. And that's what we need more
Wow,
of.
yeah.
We need to be reminded, because sometimes we're so locked in. We have our headphones in, we're reading, we're on our phones. If you ever on the train, you just pick your head up and you just look around and you're like, wow, we're just all on our phones. Or some of us are reading a book, or we're just like listening to music.
Mm-hmm.
We're just like trying our best to just like not
engage. Yeah.
Oh, especially in New York. Like, don't look at me for more than 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Right? Don't engage with me. And so, but when you're in a theater, you chose, that is a choice that you made to be around 200, 150, 300 people. You made that choice. I think that's so beautiful. That's such an interesting study to me, to choose to leave your home and to say that I want to be with somebody, to be with many people, and to engage them. That's why I really do wish that there were more comedies out there, or like comedies coming my way, because who doesn't want to laugh every day? Like, you can't get enough of that,
I think it's a fortunate and unfortunate thing that I feel like the comedy space has been a little bit more taken over by social media, where it's like we're getting our more 10-second to minute laugh, in varying different content forms, or, different medias, people, or like, all these content creators going at it from a different angle. So I feel like that's also where a lot of like the comedy gets diluted, because then it's like all the best jokes per se, I feel like that's what people think. All the best jokes were taken by TikTok or taken by Instagram or whatever. So it's like, what do we write a movie about? What do we talk about? And I think there's a lot of also fear that a lot of people have with creating comedy, because somehow comedy has become more divisive than a drama or a horror movie, even, for instance. So I think there is a lot of fear as well, and backlash, that people try to play it a little safe with comedies. I was just rewatching, because they added Rush Hour onto Netflix. I was rewatching Rush Hour, and I'm like thinking to myself, I'm like, wow, like there would be a lot of conversations had about this movie nowadays, but it's such a, as much as it's an action movie and like a thriller, it's so freaking funny. It's so funny. And I feel like that's a lot of what we're missing. And, that's something that can unify people a lot, and also expresses those cultural roots and values, because in Rush Hour specifically, like, they're making jokes about their cultural roots, like about where they're from and how they are because of those concepts. Anime has a unique way of taking niche, fantastical settings and turning them into universal stories about love, loss, and growth. What do you think makes anime so effective at speaking to a global audience while still retaining its cultural roots?
Oof, that is a good one. And you know what? I feel like, there's something special about anime, and it's a different kind of special. Even though it's like in the same vein, it's a different kind of special than a film in a way. That we know that anime means, Japanese animation,
right?
But when we generally talk about anime, we're thinking about like episodics,
right? Not
necessarily like a feature film like Belle, or something of that nature, like a Ghibli studio film,
right?
But it goes back to what you were saying when you were asking, well, what's the formula for a great film? And I was like, well, it's a good story. Something about anime, it's like it's equally the story and also equally the actual animation, like the illustration. There's something about how like whimsical and dreamlike it is. It's something that, like, okay, so when you watch a movie, like a live action film, it's an escape, right? You feel like you're escaping for a couple of hours. But when you're watching anime, for some reason, it feels like you're having a dream, like you're having an escape, but it feels real. Like you ever have a dream
Yeah.
and you wake up and you have to like, wait, am I actually alive? Like,
Yeah,
am
you
I,
take a second to think about it.
like, is this real? That's what anime feels like for me. And it's because the stories are so relatable. You're talking about perseverance and you're talking about overcoming. Like, if you feel like the underdog, if you feel less than sometimes, you're like, but I don't care. I'm going to push through. There's something about these very universal themes that anime does, that the creators of anime do such a great job at hitting, or even just like love and friendship, like sometimes like the smallest things, but like the most important and vital things in our lives, they focus on, and they manage to perfectly visualize it in this beautiful, colorful, bold way that yeah, it makes you feel like you're living your life in reality, but in this dreamlike state that so then yeah, so when the episode ends and you wake up, you're like, that was all real. None of that was fake. Like, none of that was just me escaping from a movie, like going to see the Avengers and I left and I was like, yeah, I wish I could be Iron Man. No. No, you watch Naruto and you're like, I am Naruto.
Yeah.
I'm living Sakura's life. Like, I am having an Itachi moment. Like, I am Luffy. And that's the difference. I think there's a difference between that. Like, it really feels like it's like it's having a conversation with yourself. It's like looking into a mirror. Sometimes anime is like looking into a mirror and it's just like a cartoon version of yourself. And I think that's why so many people want to live in anime. It's like, that's why we want to cosplay so badly, because we
I was just about to mention that. Yeah.
we want to live, we want to be in these worlds, because these worlds are us. And I'm sure if you gave people the choice to live in an anime for real,
They would take it.
they'd walk away from this life immediately. I mean, even if it meant to like live in to like go through the pain arc, people would take it. Like, you know, maybe I'll survive.
Yeah,
maybe
just let me know when he shows up and I'm gonna be out of town.
I'll be out of town. So, but I
that's
think
a good
maybe that's what it is. It's like, that's how. And then in terms of the culture aspect, you know, as a fan, you know, it's so interesting that they're able to speak so openly because it's Japanese. Of course, they're gonna talk about their world, right? But all I can say to that part of your question is, I think it's really interesting how many people it has inspired to want to learn how to speak Japanese and try their food. Because when you're watching anime, that's the first thing you think is like music. I want to listen to that song. Second, maybe, oh, I want to eat ramen. Now you're looking for
they make food look really good. Studio Ghibli especially.
Right, hockey sticks, the whole thing.
Yeah.
And third, then it becomes like, you know what? I love the music. I'm eating the food. I now want to, it may be next, like, I want to start dressing. Like I want to start dressing in Japanese style. Even though a lot of urban Japanese wear also is adopted from American urban wear, things of that nature, streetwear. It kind of, but they have their own spin to it. But then the next thing is like, I want to learn the language. Now you're speaking the language because you've been watching it with the subtitles, or even if you weren't, you may switch to watching it in its native language. Now you're reading in subtitles, but you're picking up. And then what's the last piece, right? I want to go to Japan. Yeah. That's not even the last piece. It's just a continuation, because then you're like, I want to have my own convention, and I want to do all these things, and you know, the cross-cultural exchange, it's never ending. Right. But there are steps to it. There's layers, and many of us have gone through it. Like I definitely, you know, like I have a whole YouTube playlist of anime music, Japanese pop culture music. Same. And I have so many foods that I love, and I go to Teiso Life all the time to get all my snacks. And I've been to Japan twice. I'm absolutely enamored and in love. I feel like one of my favorite words is Ohio, because it's just like so happy. It's like, Ohio. It's like, you know, and I wouldn't say I speak Japanese at all, but like there's certain words that are just like, they're so fun to like kind of like fall out of your mouth. It's really lovely.
could you talk a little bit more about the effect conventions have, and specifically like what AniTOMO does for a community, and what that immersion and, you know, aspect of being with other people can do for someone?
So, you know what's so funny? I've cosplayed maybe 3 times in my life. I am such a newbie. And I buy the costume, and I typically will lean on dressing up as a version of Sakura from Naruto, because out of every anime character, I relate to her so much in so many different ways. And I just love her. And I know that's like such a hot take to love Sakura, but I do. I think that it's, you know, I'm so in awe of cosplayers, especially the ones that make their own cosplay.
Yeah.
And I just love people that even take the chance to buy cosplay and wear it. And I love the first time cosplayers because it's so exciting for them. And I know how that feels, like to show up and it's not Halloween. It's just, you know, it's just a day to the con, or like, you know, it's incredible. But it's to that point of being like, you know, whisked away to this completely different world, and we just want to be somewhere else, and we want to feel something else, and we want to embody somebody else, and we want to level up in some way. It's having a transformation, and it's really exciting. And that's just that's like one part, it's a huge part of conventions, but it's one part of it. There's so much more going on, like the panels and the artists and the vendors and just the fans of people coming together and doing their own events and dancing and you know, all the content creators walking around, and all the volunteers that are supporting, and the staff, like everything that it takes to really make this clock move in some way, shape, or form. And you know what I love about conventions is that, like, you know, programmers can program a schedule, right?
Right.
But it is truly the attendees, like what they say about a man could buy a house, but a woman makes it a home, right? A wife makes it a home. It's the same thing. I feel like, you know, the staff and programmers and founders, like they create, like they get the venue, they build the program, and they invite the special guests. But it's the attendees that make the convention a con. You know, they're bringing the excitement. They're coming in cosplay. No one's paying them to come this way. They show up. Could you imagine a convention where nobody was in cosplay? Like, really think about that. How different that would look.
Yeah. I feel like I'm at like a Costco or something where everyone's just walking around just buying merch and whatnot. Yeah. It feels a little weird.
Attendees, right. Attendees are showing up to add the extra piece to a convention and they're paying the hundreds and thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
Like it is wild. So what a lot of people think about AniTOMO Con, they're like, oh, Eileen, you and your team you guys are doing such an amazing job, and like to put this together, and we could see how much hard work you're doing to like make this really about friendship and community, and you keep your convention free. Like, oh my goodness, we love it. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, thank you so much. But the reality is that I'm inspired by all of you, and I'm inspired by when I go to conventions, what I'm seeing that works, what I'm seeing that maybe not, that isn't working, or that could be better. And also, this does not happen without you. You think I'm from the film festival circuit, like I'm from that world. You think who was a fan of anime and manga 3 years ago and doesn't have a huge following, could have brought the thousands of people that came to Japan Village last year? No, that's the content creators. That's you. That is you saying, hey, I'm going to AniTOMO Con. Pull up, everybody. We're going together. The people in the audience that are at the panel, I mean, this AniTOMO Con would not be, no convention would be anything without the fans. That is 100% without, period. But what's so special about specific anime, manga, you know, conventions is they're really not going to be the same without cosplayers. It's just going to look like
that's such a crazy point that you put up, because I don't think I've ever thought of that. But like sitting here and trying to imagine like Anime NYC or even New York Comic Con and nobody was in cosplay, that'd be so weird, honestly. Everyone's in jeans and a hoodie, and it's just like, what are we doing here?
It'd be lame. It would be lame.
Yeah.
It would be so lame. And so like that's what I have to say about cosplayers and what they bring. And you know, with AniTOMO, we are raising cosplayers to the next level, and we're inviting them to like step up, because we're like, I see you. I see what you're doing. Oh my goodness. We need to put you up on the stage. I want you hosting with me. I want you to lead shows with me. I want you to, like, you tell me, how can we elevate you? So something that we're trying to do with AniTOMO Time this year. Our team and I, we came up with this idea is that, you know, why do we not? So like when you think about the Dallas Cowboys, like all these football, these major NFL football teams, they all have their cheerleaders, and everybody knows the cheerleaders. And I'm like, why don't we create that for AniTOMO? Like a group of AniTOMO cosplayers, like they hold it down. Like these are the AniTOMO cosplayers. They are like, it's not just ambassadors, but really they hold it down. So if you're a new cosplayer and you come through the doors, you're gonna meet the AniTOMO cosplayers. They're gonna introduce you, give you like, you know, the rules and regulations, how to protect yourself, see something, say something, how to like get through all the nervous kinks. Like, oh, if your cosplay messes up, here's where you can go to get it fixed. Or also like having them lead, like, so typically at the convention, I'm the one that's like tossing t-shirts and prizes to the audience. But at my last event, the you know, AniTOMO's NYE Anime Rewind, if you were there and noticed, the cosplayers, my premier cosplayers were the ones that were activated to get the audience going. Why does it have to be me? Yeah. Like just because I'm the founder? No. You have to acknowledge when somebody does something, not only are they like great at it, they're better at it at you, and they want to do it. That's their thing, right? So like, I was like, wait a minute. Instead of me handing out the prizes, right? Like tossing out the prizes, the cosplayers should be activated to power up. It's like cosplayers have so much power, right? And they're using the power that they think they have. But when you see like, oh, no, you can go above and beyond. Like you are actually capable of taking this all the way. And that's where I'm thinking about how we're working with cosplayers for AniTOMO for 2025 is like, we need to activate them full throttle. Yeah. Like it's almost like, and I always refer back to Naruto because Naruto is my favorite anime. But it's like Naruto had Kurama within him, right? Yeah. But it wasn't activated. Like, how do you activate that power to its full power? Yeah. And I think cosplayers are the key to conventions. And a lot of us are like, well, duh, Eileen. And I'm like, no. I'm not saying just showing up. I'm not saying that. I'm saying more. I'm not saying just a masquerade. Like, not saying just like, oh, the cosplay fashion show. I'm like, no, they should be leading. Cosplayers should be leading cosplay fashion shows. Cosplayers should be at panels, handing out prizes, or being the MC, or being the moderator. Like they should be like. There's just so many ways that I haven't even fully tapped into, but we're thinking through that with cosplayers, right? Because I can't just come up with things like that if I'm not a 24/7 cosplayer. I need to work with them. But that's where like I get super excited. I'm like, oh no, we need to activate a squad of cosplayers. And that's kind of like I need my Avenger cosplayers at AniTOMO. And so we're building that out.
It's amazing.
There's so much to say about conventions and how they're growing. And oh my gosh, there's so much to say. I feel like there is a rumbling happening in the convention community for artists. So think about this, Adonis, right? There's new conventions popping up all the time.
Yeah, a lot.
And at first, there's a lot. At first, I was thinking, oh my goodness, AniTOMO was created at the perfect time. Because Anime NYC actually hasn't even been around for 10 years yet. It's still pretty new. It's almost like an adolescent. But it's like an adolescent that matured quickly. It's like, oh snap. Like, oh, you know, Caitlin showed up to 9th grade and she is full figure now. Yeah. Like, oh my gosh. Like Anime NYC went from like year one and it was like, boom, amazing. Yeah. Oh my gosh, we love Anime NYC. But AniTOMO came around and I'm like, now we're 3 years old and we're developing at a really quick rate too, but not to that degree because we're not Javits Center level, right. And that's not what we're trying to be. But I was like, oh, this is so great. People were telling me you may be the only free convention in New York City, like officially free convention, not like a library convention. Because there's been manga anime, you know, the Schomburg, they have their Comic-Con version, like that's very popular annually. But like outside of a library, and that's where we started. We started our first year. Our inaugural year was at the Brooklyn Heights Library, thanks to the Brooklyn Public Library Incubator Program. I won a grant, and I was able to create the AniTOMO first convention. But then we went on to Japan Village in our second year, and it went from having 500 people, 1,000 registered, but 500 people in attendance based on how many people could keep in the venue.
Right.
We couldn't have more than that. To then thousands of people in year two, because we had more space, more programming, more people buzzing about it. Yeah. But we were a free convention, really free, not with a catch. And so that to me was really interesting. And now we have another there's an incredible convention in that is also now free for the first year. Their first year free was last year in Staten Island. And but I say all that to say there are new conventions that are popping up all across the city, and it's very exciting. But there are two things that I'm feeling for artists and for attendees when there is just like oversaturation. How many conventions can somebody go to?
Yeah.
How many conventions can an
fatigue
attendee
sometimes?
Fatigue and paying. Like how many figures can you actually fit in your home? Posters can you fit in your home? Like
I have too many Funkos myself, I think.
And so I get a little concerned with like, oh, this is great because for one, it supports vendors and artists, because a lot of them are like on tour. They're going on tour selling their work, and like a lot of them wish they could just be like full time at it. You know, sometimes they have a job and they're doing this as an entrepreneur on the side. But attendees, how many events can they go to? For now, it's okay, because there are so many people that actually are fans of manga and anime, but they have yet to go to their first convention, surprisingly.
Right.
Because it's too far, it's too expensive, or tickets run out, right?
Yeah.
So we are still fine. It's the same thing with the movie-going experience. Every community should have their own cinema. And you know what? Every community should have their own con. Yeah. So that you don't have to leave. You shouldn't have to go so far out to get access to community and things that you love. But like I said before, sometimes you got to go to AMC to get the Hollywood quality films, right? You need that big sound. So sometimes you got to go to the Anime NYC because they're going to have the big players. But you should easily be able to go to your community up the block around the corner and go to a local con where maybe the tickets aren't, the badges are not as high. There's space for you. It's accessible, affordable. But you may not get Crunchyroll, right? Like or Viz Media at the big level, or like your favorite Japanese voice actor. But you'll get local artists that are up and coming. You'll get to have really curated panels. But so we're good. But there is fatigue that I wonder, is that happening? Ooh, that makes me nervous because I'm just getting started. So I'm still building an audience. And I wonder, I'm like, thankfully I'm free so it's easy for people to show up to a free event. I don't have to be concerned with like, oh man, we just paid for Anime NYC and we just paid for DreamCon and we just paid for this.
Right. So how am I going to afford AniTOMO? Right. Exactly.
So thankfully I'm good in that way. But I think that there is there may be a level of fatigue. So that's why we are all going to have to do our work to find new audiences that have not gone to your convention yet or have never gone to a con. There's plenty of that. And there are new manga and anime fans being born every single day or having an awakening. You could be 30 years old and you're like, I never liked anime and manga. And suddenly you're like, whoa, I watch AOT and I've been missing out. Now, but the other rumbling that's happening that I think a lot of artists are talking about is this idea of like, wait a minute, I just spent thousands of dollars to like hundreds for the table.
Being a vendor is expensive.
What?
It's insane.
And they're talking about it. They're exposing conventions. They're like, yeah, I spent all this money, and then they had me tabled next to another table that's practically selling similar work to what I'm selling. Maybe not the same artwork, but they're selling posters, I'm selling posters. They're selling keychains, I'm selling keychains. And it's like, oh my gosh. And they're not pulling away. They're not breaking even. They're actually going in the red. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, when I talk to you about Adonis, I said cosplayers. What? When I said cosplayers are like, like cosplayers, like, could you imagine a convention without cosplayers? Well, could you imagine a convention without artists? I am like, artists better not go on strike. Cosplayers have no reason to go on strike right now. And if they ever did, it would be more around the fact of like, because you're not paying to like you're
Right.
paying your badge, but you made a choice to like come up
Right.
and dress up. Like that's the fun part of it. And for the most part, a lot of conventions have guidelines in place to protect cosplayers.
Right.
And there's supposed to be security and all these things to protect cosplayers. But for artists, I'm like, there's no guarantee that they're gonna make money. And they're paying to be there, but could you imagine a convention without Artist Alley or Vendor Alley? So there's rumblings happening, and they're starting to talk about it online. Where like they didn't think about where they placed me, and like I didn't even get many.
Yeah, they
people
threw you in like
table.
a back corner for like
not...
$2,000-$3,000, and it's like I'm here for 3 days, and I made $200 this whole weekend.
Right, but the convention already made their money. They're like, I got your table money. Yeah. And it's like, I'm good. And it's like, ooh, it's getting scary. And so I've been seeing people post things. And when I tell you, I screenshot these posts because then I go back to the team and I'm like, oh, we can't do this. We can't do this. And we need to do this. And I want to do this for them because we need to take care of them too. Because they're taking care of us. They're paying a fee. And we're definitely using their money to buy swag, to buy the tables that they're sitting at. Like, and that's the thing. Like, you know, I know that I heard that some artists feel like artists and vendors may be feeling as though they're a cash grab too. Like, oh, you're just gonna take my money and put me anywhere. And like, you got your money and look at me now. I'm like struggling to sell something. And I don't want them to feel that. But of course they should know that yes, you're paying a table fee because conventions need money to survive. Like grants are not easy to come by. We're not all guaranteed grants. And so we have to make money off of ticket sales and Artist Alley. That's like the two ways that conventions can guarantee their funds. But I'm a free con, so I'm definitely dependent on artists and vendors. But we really have to do our best to support them because you cannot create a rumble with artists at all or vendors. That's dangerous.
That's very
but I also know that for a con they're thinking like, oh, we have all this space, let's just fill it with 1,000 tables, and then you times 100. Do you know how much money you can make?
People don't
times 200 by 100 tables. Do you know how much that it's not a lot in the grand scheme of like when you have thousands of people are coming, that means that you have to have more staff. That money goes away fast. But that's still a good chunk of thousands of dollars.
That's a lot of money.
You just gained off of just saying like, all right, let's put 100 tables here. But you got to do it right. You got to curate that. You got to be really careful. We have to think about that all the time. Like we cannot put the same artist next to this like similar artwork.
Right.
You can't do that. Ooh, that's dangerous. So that's something that I'm thinking about. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I am a new founder. I am such a baby in this space. I have so much to learn in this space. I never envisioned myself becoming a founder of a convention, running a convention. My life has always been movie theaters. I love movie theaters and it's still my number one love. But now I'm in this world and I can't stop because more people are like, no, AniTOMO, when are you coming back? When we were done with our first year, the immediate social media responses were like, when is 2024? When is 2024 happening? I was like, what? I have to do this again? And so that's kind of like how it's been. And then like, it just keeps growing and growing and there's so much possibility, but there is a rumbling and I'm like, ooh, I don't want to like ruffle anybody's feathers. I want to stay in the green. So convention life is something else.
I can't help but to think I feel like this is, if anything, you becoming a founder and hosting this event is almost a natural progression from being where you were in cinema, where conventions are the movie theater for people that enjoy anime. You know, people watching anime never got the, you know, it's mostly an individual experience. It's mostly you just watching it at home by yourself or reading the manga by yourself, or if you're getting lucky, watching it with friends or streaming it with friends. But, you know, you're, again, like how you were stating, you have to create the space, you have to create the environment, you have to, whether if it's just a white sheet that you put up and just some speakers and a couple chairs, it's the same thing with this convention, whether it's just a couple vendors empowering cosplayers, whether it's having a fashion show, or even just a couple special guests speaking to, a bunch of prospective learners and enthusiasts of the media. It's like you have to create that, because it's, as I was just saying, it's empowering a lot of these people. It's empowering them to continue to love the anime, the manga, the comics, whatever it is that they love, but then to take it to that next step where it's, now they're thinking about it, the show, a little bit differently. You're approaching a phase where it's like you're kind of allowing them to advance and broaden their perspective, where it's like, wow, I really love One Piece, but now I'm looking at it from a political lens, because I'm going so deep into it, and I'm like, wow, like the world government has a lot of similarities to how the world looks like right now and whatnot, where you're looking at something like Naruto, and then you're looking at a kid who's on a swing by himself, and now it's not just a show anymore. Now you're actually seeing a kid in real life on a swing hanging out by himself, and you're like, wow, I hated how they were treating Naruto like that, but I'm just walking by this kid every single day. So it's like, there are those people, whether it's you or whether it's someone else, creating that space where it's advancing these people's minds, advancing their perspectives, and allowing them to see life a little bit differently. So yeah. I want to thank you in general just for creating that kind of space for people, especially a free one, because, times are tough and things are only going to keep getting more expensive. So having a avenue where it's cheaper in terms of transportation, but then also affordable for even being present at the venue, it's something that shouldn't be lost on people. And as sad as it is, it's like, that's what we're having to get to, where it's like, we have to keep trying to create these community events, these community spaces for people to get together, because especially after COVID, not only have people become scared, I feel like, to kind of interact with people, it's also a lost skill that it only took like 2 years or so for people to already, feel more comfortable just being by themselves. I know for myself, my friends sometimes call me a hermit crab, because not only am I that type of person where I do like being alone or at home and whatnot, but I found that, actually, speaking of which, going to the Family Feud event was actually like the first time of me like really going out in so long, that I had one of my friends come with me. And if I had not brought my friend with me, I bought 2 raffle tickets, right? The second raffle ticket I bought was the one that had me go on stage to to participate in the Family Feud event. So I'm like, if I never would have brought my friend, if I never would have gone, I never would have met Justin, I never would have met you, and then it's like, none of this stuff would have happened. And it's so many doors that open up from having a space like you, like what you're doing, from even having from a convention to even hosting different events and different pop-up events, whether it's at OS or any other type of venue. Again, it's opening the doors, whether it's professional basis or whether it's a friendship basis. Growing all these relationships is the thing that we need the most in life right now, and especially moving forward into 2025 and so on forward. That's, I think, the most critical thing that we're going to need as a society, is that we're going to need to be together and need to stick together.
The work is hard. The work is not hard. The work that I'm doing is so easy, in the way that I am just letting my ideas flow, and my team is doing the same thing. And a lot of oh my gosh, if you were ever one of our meetings, the way that it sounds is like, that would be a good idea. What else? How else can we do it? And it ends with like, all right, now I'm going to figure out how to do this. And that's it. Let one person say one thing to me, and I get like a sparkle, like you could see it in my face. I literally start to sparkle, and I'm like, I love it. We're doing it. And then we are so fortunate that so far, all of the ideas that I have said has come true. I remember I Keepy at 9000 invited me and Ashley is my head of marketing at AniTOMO, to do an interview months ago. And by the end of that interview, during their podcast, I said, it'd be really cool if we highlighted content creators on the stage, and then we did a screening, and then we did it was like a New Year's Eve kind of thing. In their space, I did that. And they're like, oh, okay, wow, she's really excited. I was like, no, I'm serious. We're gonna figure this out. And fast forward, I made it happen.
Yeah. And that was so much fun to be at. Yeah.
No, and it was we don't have, I don't know anything like this specifically, where you do like a New Year's Eve event, you do a screening, and you allow content creators who are typically behind the screen. They're on their you're seeing them via YouTube or via Instagram or TikTok or any way, like through that, right? Or Spotify. But this was an actual opportunity to meet them in person, to engage with them in person. Like you were saying, we need this now more than ever. And to wrap up the year, how could we not talk about the best anime of the year together in a cinematic space? And this is something that I thought about too, is that there are more anime movies coming out. And sometimes the industry just plays us. They basically show us 3 anime episodes and chunk.
Oh my God, don't even get me started. Yeah.
I'm like, you're playing me right now. But I'll do it, because that's how badly our community of fans want to watch anime together.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? Sometimes I watch an episode, like last night I was watching Solo Leveling, the last episode, and I'm screenshotting it and sending it to people. I'm like, oh my gosh, did you see what just happened? And I'm by myself though. Yeah. I want to watch anime oh my gosh, Adonis, if I ever actually get a brick and mortar, or when my cinema mural goes up, I cannot wait to have regular anime screenings, because that's essential.
That's gonna be insane.
Are you kidding me?
Wow.
No, it's not supposed to be an isolated thing. Like we need, yes, sometimes you want to watch anime by yourself, but like I want to watch it with a lot of people. Like that's something I want to feel with a lot of people. And so it's just there's just so much possibilities that are open. But when I was saying at first, like, oh, the work is hard, I really mean like it just takes a lot of work. Like I'm working on, and AniTOMO is not my full-time job, but it is a full-time job. I'm working on AniTOMO all the time, and it's because the ideas are so endless. There's so many ideas that keep popping up. We just had a new idea that popped up, like maybe like 3 new ideas that's going to change what AniTOMO 2025 looks like. But also we have another pop-up event that we're really, really excited to develop, produce, and announce to everybody. That'll come later on. I can't talk about it yet because it's so new, but I'm like, how lucky are we to be able to do this? And you know what? I was talking about this the other night. AniTOMO's been around for 3 years. And I feel like we've accomplished so much. We've set out to do exactly what we were supposed to do. The idea was that, it was created during the pandemic where, I started an anime club online, had like 5 people join, and we kept it regular. We just kept coming back every week to talk about anime. Then we came back on site to my community center that I was working at. And then I was like, you know what? Let's just keep it going. Let's keep meeting up and talking about anime and watching episodes. And then when I got wind of the Brooklyn Public Library Incubator Grant, I was like, I'm gonna apply, because there's this community center is in East New York, and I was like, there's so many young people that want to make anime. They want to make manga, and they want to go to Japan. But the thing that changed everything for me, that made me want to apply for this grant, was that one of the young members that was like always coming to the clubs, and I really grew to like this person, because I was like, oh, you're so passionate about these stories, and he always wanted to show me what he was working on. But one day he was like, I was like, what happened to the next panel? He was like, I stopped working on it. I was like, why? He was like, I'm probably never gonna get to do it. And then like he started building up these walls that nobody built for him. Technically, right? Technically. He built them for himself because he thought it was gonna happen. I'm never gonna go to Japan. It's never gonna happen. But that's what society does to you. So many issues, right? That I won't get into, but we already know what I'm talking about. Like, these walls that are created by society, but you naturally will build them and tell yourself you cannot. So when I got wind of the grant, I was like, I'm applying, and I'm gonna apply to create a convention that is free. And thankfully it's the library, so everything has to be free, but that's free. And also that is designed, not just that it invites people of color to attend. No, that to me is DreamCon. For people of color, by people of color. And that was new and exciting. And nobody does it like DreamCon. Nobody does it like they are like, they are one-upping
100%.
themselves every single day. It's wild.
I agree.
I love to look at the work that they do, and I'm always looking at their website. I'm like, oh, that's what they're doing is incredible. They are experts. But what AniTOMO is, and I want people to understand, it is a convention that is for everybody, but it is designed by people of color. There's power to that. And the reason why that's so powerful is because that's so normal, right? For people to say like, oh, it's going to be created by us, but only for us. Yeah, there is power to that. And that is needed. You do need to hold space for you, by you, or the whole thing. Mm-hmm. But you go to the next level when you're like, I'm not only gonna make it by us, people that have been underrepresented and historically disenfranchised, mm-hmm. I'm gonna be so nice. That's like a different level of beautiful petty, right? I'm gonna be so nice that I'm still gonna invite you. The very people that have kept us out of the, and I'm not saying Japanese people kept us out of it. No, that's not it. I'm not saying that at all. Mm-hmm. Japanese people are welcoming us all the time. They're inviting us to watch their shows on a daily basis. I'm talking about like systemic racism in this country, right? That you have pushed us to the edge, to the point where we're like, we're now going to have to start creating brands and specifically for us. And please show up for us, people. No, I was like, and because you pushed us to the edge, like we have to start doing that. But I was like, you know what's more beautiful to me, in a sense, when you create it, when you're able to create it and say like, and I'm still gonna invite you, the very person that has done wrong by me, you're still gonna be invited to my table. Yeah. And you're welcome. And I'm not gonna treat you disrespectfully. I'm gonna treat you like everybody else. Have a seat. I'm gonna pull a chair out for you, give you like the whole red carpet, just like my friend here and my brother here and my sister here.
There's a lot of power in that, yeah.
Oh my God, there's so much power to that. And that's why I love being like a Caribbean Haitian woman. I love that about my people, because I feel like that's very Caribbean like. That like our doors are open, we will take care of you. That's a very Black thing, I think, to me personally, is that like, come through, I see you. And that's always been the case. And so I was like, I love that about AniTOMO, is that it's always going to be open to everybody. And you know, and so I think but no, the faces that are creating it. Right. And that's why I spend so much time going to low performing schools, or schools that are in underrepresented neighborhoods like Brownsville or in East New York or in Canarsie or wherever, Coney Island. We go to these schools because they already have like a chip on their shoulder. Mm-hmm. They are already being reminded on a constant basis, oh, you're a bad school. Oh, they must have bad students in here. And then you walk into the school and that's not even the case. That's not even the case. It's not even the full story. But we go to these schools and we speak to the students that are fans of anime and manga. And we say, well, if you were to create a convention, what would it look like? I need your help. Help me design this. And that's how we create our program every single year. Is we go on an AniTOMO plus Ultra tour, and we choose a specific certain amount of schools. I look for like literally the lowest performing schools. Mm-hmm. I'm specifically doing that on purpose. And then we go to these schools, and our assumptions are wrong always. The schools are always incredible, and the kids are always like inspired and excited, and they are so ready and charged. And they write on a Post-it, all right, I want this, I want that, I want that. They've given us so many amazing ideas. Yeah. And then we take all the ideas, and within our budget, we bring AniTOMO Con to everybody. That's how it's designed, literally. And that's how we're gonna keep it. We're gonna keep it going just like that. So I'm excited to say that yesterday we were just looking at our schedule. AniTOMO officially has an event happening every single month except for January, because January is always our kickoff programming month. So from February to December, AniTOMO will have an event. I will not be releasing the convention date just yet. We have a special day that we'll be doing that. But our next event for February is the second annual Anime Love Connection, and that's going to be on February 15th. That is a Saturday. Doors open at 7 p.m. This is a live show. So when the show starts, it starts. I believe that some people last year, I think they just showed up later and they're like, oh, the show already started. And I'm like, yeah, this is not just like a dating mixer where you kind of like slip in. It's a show. So you got to show up on time. And we're really excited about this Anime Love Connection. And then, of course, we have events coming up in March, April, and so on and so forth, which stay tuned. And the way to do that is to check in with our Instagram page. It's AniTOMO _con, ANITOMO _con. That's the best way to keep up to date. But we hope to see a lot of people at Anime Love Connection. It's queer inclusive. It's for everybody. We're gonna have multiple rounds of like helping people find their love by way of sharing their anime interest.
That's awesome.
So it's going to be a really good time. There's going to be lots of opportunities for the attendees and the audience to take part in the stage activities. And then there's going to be a mixer as well. So it's all, it's about love, lust, friendship, and anime. It's all the things. So if you're not looking for love, make a friend. It's going to be good times.
Thank you so much for joining today. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me and for seeing the work that, me and the AniTOMO team are working on, for spotlighting me, because every interview counts to spread the word. There's so many people that still don't know about us, and we have a long way to go, but I feel seen and I feel heard. So thank you so much for Adonis, and yeah, it's gonna be great.